Daniel Ross stood quietly inside the docking bay of the Vulcan flagship, Rexall Dawn, trying not to stare too much at everything happening around him. For a human engineer from Earth, the sight of hundreds of fox-like alien soldiers moving in perfect formation was something he never imagined he would witness in his life. Their tails moved with balance and purpose, their steps sharp and controlled, and their armor shone under the bright white lights of the bay. Every Vulcan he saw looked strong, disciplined, and confident. He felt like a small puzzle piece dropped into the wrong box. Still, he kept his smile polite and friendly. This was, after all, one of the proudest moments of his life. Earth had finally been invited to send a technical ambassador to the Vulcan Empire, and somehow he had been chosen. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a diplomat, and he wasn't even a famous scientist. He was just Daniel, someone who repaired machines faster than most people could break them. A Vulcan officer approached him with quick steps. The officer's name tag spelled something Daniel could not pronounce, so he simply nodded when the officer said, "Human ambassador, please follow. The Admiral waits." Daniel swallowed. Everyone in the galaxy knew the name of Admiral Shira Vex. She was a living legend, a commander who never feared battle and never showed weakness. Stories about her tactics and victories were told on many worlds. She was known for two things: sharp decisions and zero tolerance for mistakes. Daniel hoped he would not make his first mistake in the first 5 minutes. The officer guided him into a long corridor. Transparent walls looked out into space, showing rivers of stars stretching across darkness. Daniel stared for a moment. He had never seen a star field from inside a Vulcan warship. It looked beautiful and frightening at the same time. The officer spoke again. "Before you meet the Admiral, we must link your voice to her translation system." Daniel frowned. "I thought the ship already had a universal translator." "It does," the officer said, "but the Admiral uses a personal unit. It is more secure, more private." Then the officer added quietly, "It is also old, but she trusts it." Daniel wondered if old meant dangerous. He raised an eyebrow but followed when the officer motioned him toward a small station. Several screens lit up. A small metallic device floated above a tray. "This chip listens to your speech pattern," the officer explained. "It converts your words into Vulcan meaning. Stand still." Daniel nodded. The device floated closer and beeped softly. Light circled around him, scanning his throat and jaw. The officer pressed a few buttons on a console. "There," the officer said. "It should be ready. Now the Admiral will understand you perfectly." Daniel smiled. "Great. I don't want to embarrass myself." The officer's ears twitched. "Do not worry. Embarrassment is common for new humans." Daniel wasn't sure how to respond to that, but the officer had already turned and motioned for him to continue walking. They reached 2 tall doors guarded by armored soldiers. The guards bowed slightly, then pressed their palms to glowing panels. The doors opened with a low hum, revealing the Admiral's command hall. Daniel felt his heart jump. Admiral Shira Vex stood in the center of the room like a blade of living steel. Her fur was silver with sharp black streaks running along her arms and tail. Her armor was light but strong, shaped to allow quick movement. Her eyes, bright and focused, looked like 2 small suns locked in permanent alertness. Around her, several officers studied maps floating in holographic circles. But when Daniel entered, every officer paused. Even Shira turned. The officer guiding Daniel stepped forward and bowed. "Admiral, the human ambassador is here." Shira nodded slowly. Her movements were precise, controlled, and powerful, as if she calculated every step before taking it. She approached Daniel with quiet confidence, her tail moving behind her like a slow, measured wave. Daniel reminded himself to breathe. She stopped a few feet away and looked at him directly. Her expression was unreadable. Her ears pointed forward, testing him, evaluating him. He extended his hand, a human greeting gesture, hoping she would not be offended. "Admiral Shira Vex," he said warmly. "It is an honor to meet you, friend." The moment the word friend left his mouth, something strange happened. The translation chip on her armor blinked red. A tiny spark jumped. The holographic interpreter flickered like a broken screen. Then it produced one loud, clear Vulcan word. Not the word for friend, the word for husband. Every officer in the room froze instantly. Shira's tail shot upward, a sign of complete shock in Vulcan culture. One officer dropped his datapad. Another gasped loud enough to echo. Daniel blinked. Did I say something wrong?" Nobody answered. The contact officer from earlier looked like someone had unplugged his brain. He stammered, "Admiral, the translation, glitch, Admiral Shira Vex did not move. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she did not show anger. Instead, she looked at Daniel for a long, silent moment, long enough that Daniel felt sweat forming at the back of his neck. Shira finally spoke. Her voice was calm but firm. "Human Daniel Ross, you greet me with the Vulcan Declaration of Life Bond." Daniel blinked. "The what?" "Life bond," she repeated. "A vow, a union, a promise that cannot be taken lightly." Daniel's stomach dropped. "I didn't say that. I said friend." The officer cleared his throat weakly. "Admiral, the translation chip is old. It sometimes misreads emotional tone as deeper meaning." Shira turned slowly toward the officer. "Why was I not informed of this malfunction?" The officer bowed immediately. "Forgive me, Admiral. It was functional last cycle. I did not expect—" She raised a single hand. The officer stopped talking instantly. Daniel felt panic building. "Admiral, I swear I didn't say anything romantic. I wasn't proposing anything." Shira looked back at him. Her eyes were steady, but something behind them was unreadable. "Among the Vulcan, once a life bond declaration is spoken and heard, it enters the record, even if accidental." "Accidental?" Daniel repeated nervously. "Accidents happen all the time. We can undo it, right?" Silence filled the room. A heavy silence. Shira's answer came slowly, carefully. "No bond can be undone without review by the High Council. Until they examine the situation, the bond stands." Daniel felt like his soul left his body, walked out of the ship, and floated away into space. "So I'm... what? Married to you?" The entire command hall shook with whispers. Shira's tail lowered a little. Not angry, not happy. Something else. Maybe confusion, maybe acceptance, maybe something Daniel could not understand. "You are human," she said quietly. "Your customs are different. I do not believe you meant insult." She paused. "And I do not believe you meant union." "That's correct," Daniel said quickly. "No insult, no union, just friendship." Her eyes softened very slightly, the tiniest shift in expression. Still, she straightened her posture and regained her usual commanding tone. "Nevertheless, until the Council reviews this, you will remain under my protection. The bond makes you a priority figure aboard this flagship." Daniel groaned inside his mind. "Wonderful." She returned to her officers. "Prepare the contact request to the Council. Inform them of a translation malfunction. We will wait for their decision." The officers nodded and rushed to their stations. Shira then looked back at Daniel. "Come. If we are bound even by accident, you will accompany me." Daniel followed her, trying not to collapse from stress. Great. Perfect. Fantastic first day. As they walked toward the upper decks, Vulcan soldiers stared at him. Some looked confused, some amused, some shocked. One soldier whispered too loudly, "The Admiral finally chose someone?" Another answered, "No way. He's too soft." "He must have tricked the translator," Daniel pretended not to hear any of it. Shira led him into a lift. When the doors closed, silence returned. Daniel stood awkwardly while Shira looked straight ahead. Finally, he spoke softly. "I really didn't mean to cause trouble," Shira answered in her calm, steady voice. "You have caused no trouble. The galaxy is full of unexpected paths. We walk them as they come." Daniel wasn't sure if that was comforting or terrifying. The lift reached the Admiral's private level. When the doors opened, Daniel realized something important. Because of one tiny translation glitch, his entire life had just changed. He was now, at least temporarily, considered the life bond partner of one of the strongest, most respected, most feared commanders in the galaxy. And he had no idea how he was going to survive the next 24 hours. Daniel followed Admiral Shira through the quiet upper corridors of Rexall Dawn, trying not to trip over his own feet. The ship was huge, and every hallway looked perfectly polished, organized, and intimidating. Vulcan soldiers moved with purpose. They carried themselves like warriors trained from birth, their steps light but powerful, their eyes sharp. Daniel, in comparison, felt like a confused tourist, standing in the middle of a military parade. Shira walked a few steps ahead of him, her posture straight and confident. She didn't show embarrassment or anger about the bond mistake. She looked calm, maybe too calm, as if she had already accepted the situation and was now simply adjusting to a new mission. Daniel wasn't adjusting at all. He kept thinking, "I'm accidentally married to a Fox alien admiral." Then he thought, "How do I unmarry myself from a Fox alien admiral?" Then he thought, "Why did I say friend so loudly? Does my voice really sound like husband?" The door to Shira's strategy chamber opened with a soft sound. Inside, the room was circular with a wide holographic table in the center. Floating maps, star routes, and fleet positioning diagrams rotated slowly above the table like moving constellations. Vulcan officers waited around the edges, talking quietly until Shira entered. When she stepped inside, the officers straightened instantly. Daniel felt their eyes on him the moment he appeared behind her. One officer whispered softly, "This is the human bondmate?" Another whispered back, "He looks harmless." Daniel wondered if he should take that as an insult or a compliment. Shira ignored their whispers. She motioned for Daniel to stand beside her, and every officer became even stiffer. Daniel felt like he had stepped into a spotlight he never asked for. Shira tapped a hologram to life. The image of a star cluster blinked into view. "We have trouble in the border sectors," she said. "Zyre Dominion ships have attacked 2 of our patrols. The Dominion is testing our defense lines." Daniel blinked. He had heard of the Zyre Dominion, the insectoid species that fought with cold precision and cared nothing about honor or negotiation. They were dangerous, unpredictable, and extremely aggressive. One officer spoke. "Admiral, our scouts report Zyre movement near Corridor 12. Their ships are larger than before. They may be preparing a bigger attack." Shira nodded slowly. Her tail flicked once. "The Dominion rarely tests us without purpose. They want something." She looked at Daniel. "Human, what do you think of this pattern?" Daniel froze. "Me?" Shira's expression didn't change. "Yes, you are my bond partner now. You stand with me in strategy until the Council rules otherwise." Daniel nearly said, "Please don't remind me," but he kept quiet. He stepped closer to the hologram, studying the glowing star map. He wasn't a military officer, but he understood patterns better than most. Engineering required pattern recognition. Machines always told a story through their problems. He stared at the blinking red zones. Something felt strange. "These attacks are too clean," he said slowly. "Too evenly spaced. The spacing is exactly the same distance. Here, here, and here." He pointed to 3 positions on the map. One officer frowned. That is true, but what does it mean? Machines do this sometimes, Daniel said. When they test a system, they poke different parts to see how strong it is, how fast it reacts. Shira's ears lifted slightly. You believe the Dominion is mapping our response time? Yes, Daniel said. They're not attacking to win. They're attacking to learn. The officers exchanged glances. One of them nodded thoughtfully. It fits. Their retreats were too quick, as if they wanted us to notice them. Shira considered Daniel's words carefully. If you are correct, then the Dominion is planning a larger strike, something big enough to require perfect timing. Daniel nodded. Something like that. Shira looked at her officers. Increase patrols on all border lines and double long-range scans. Then she looked at Daniel again. You have a sharp eye. Daniel felt a small bit of pride rise inside him. Thank you, I try. The officers looked at him with new respect now, though some still stared at him with curiosity because of the life bond situation. After the briefing, Shira motioned for Daniel to walk with her again. They moved down a quieter hallway toward the observation deck. Human Daniel, she said softly, you may speak freely here. Daniel looked at her. Okay, honestly? I am really stressed. Shira gave a calm nod. Understandable. Vulcan culture is complex. You did not intend to form a life bond. No, I definitely did not, Daniel said quickly. I just wanted to show respect. Shira stopped near a large window that showed the glowing space outside. Stars drifted like glitter across a black sea. She looked at them silently. On my world, she said, a life bond is the deepest promise two people can make. We do not give it easily. Daniel said nothing. He could hear the seriousness in her voice. She continued. I do not believe you meant to offer such a promise, but the words were spoken, and Vulcan tradition is strict. Daniel sighed. So, until your council decides we're partners? Correct, he rubbed his face. Great, fantastic, wonderful. Shira almost smiled for a very small second. Then her expression returned to its usual calm strength. A sudden alarm beeped across the deck. A voice echoed through the speakers. Admiral, engineering reports a heat spike in the plasma core. Shira's eyes narrowed. We will see it. She began walking quickly. Daniel followed, his heart racing. A heat spike in a plasma core was extremely dangerous. They reached engineering within minutes. Smoke rolled from one of the upper conduits. Vulcan technicians rushed around trying to disable the heating cycle. A technician shouted, Admiral, a coolant valve is jammed. The core will overload in 6 minutes. Shira stepped forward. Shut down the secondary conduits. We tried, the technician replied. The circuit is locked. Daniel didn't think. He ran straight toward the smoking panel. Shira called out, Human Daniel, it is unsafe. But Daniel was already opening the side hatch. I know this design, he said. Human ships had similar coolant systems before the upgrade 20 years ago. I can fix it. The Vulcan technicians froze. Someone whispered, The human is actually touching the core systems? Someone else whispered, What if he dies? The Admiral's bondmate dying in engineering would be a disaster. Daniel ignored them. He pulled out a small portable tool from his pocket, something he always carried. He reached into the panel and examined the coolant valve. It's stuck, he said, but not broken. He twisted the tool and forced the valve open halfway. The heat readings dropped slightly. I need someone strong to pull the secondary lever. Shira stepped beside him immediately. Show me, Daniel pointed. There. Shira gripped the heavy metal lever with both hands and pulled. Her muscles flexed. The lever resisted, then moved slowly. The core readings stabilized. The technicians stared in shock. Daniel breathed out. Okay, core cooling again. Problem solved. Shira looked at him silently. Her tail lowered a little. relief. The engineering chief bowed deeply. Admiral, your human bond partner saved the Corps. Without his action, we would have lost the entire section. Shira nodded once, but said nothing. Daniel stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. His hands were shaking a little. Fixing things under pressure always brought a rush. Shira walked toward him. Daniel Ross. Yes? You acted fast. You acted with courage. Daniel shrugged. Well, I didn't want your ship to blow up. That would ruin my day. Shira's ears twitched. She almost smiled again. Later, they returned to the Admiral's personal planning room. Shira stood tall, her expression serious but strangely softer now. You surprised many people today, she said, including me. Daniel rubbed his neck. I just did what I always do. You acted as a partner should, she said. Daniel froze. Oh, that wasn't my goal. Perhaps not, she said, but the result is the same. He didn't know what to say. His heart beat a little faster, not out of romance, but because Shira's voice carried a weight he didn't understand. Their moment was interrupted when an officer rushed in with a message. Admiral, the Zir Dominion has sent a transmission. They demand negotiations or they will strike a major Vulcan city. Shira straightened immediately. Prepare the War Council. Daniel felt a chill. They're moving fast. Shira turned to him. And you will be with me. The bond requires you to join all strategic discussions. Daniel groaned softly. Lucky me. But this time, Shira did smile. Just a tiny one. And that tiny smile told Daniel that whatever happened next, things were about to get much more complicated. Daniel stood beside Admiral Shira as the War Council formed around the large holographic table. Vulcan officers filled the room, each one tense and alert. The Zir Dominion's threat had changed the entire energy of the ship. Nobody whispered now. Nobody dared to relax. Every movement was sharp. Every second mattered. The hologram showed the Vulcan capital world glowing in bright blue, surrounded by defense lines. Red Zir symbols flickered at the borders, moving closer each minute like hungry insects crawling toward a light. Shira's voice cut through the silence. They claim they want negotiations, but this is a trap. The Dominion never negotiates unless they already plan to strike. One officer nodded. They demand that you, Admiral, come to the negotiation point alone. Daniel frowned. Alone? That is definitely a trap. Shira agreed. They hope to remove me from command. Without an admiral, the fleet will hesitate. Her eyes narrowed. But we cannot refuse the meeting. If we refuse, they will strike the capital immediately. Daniel looked at the map again. His stomach twisted. So the meeting is dangerous. But not going is also dangerous. Correct, Shira said. Daniel glanced at her. Then what will you do? Shira's tail moved slowly behind her. Her calm expression hid the weight of her decision. We go to the meeting, but we do not walk into their trap blindly. The officers waited. Shira continued. Daniel Ross will come with me. Several officers looked shocked. One almost dropped his data tablet. Admiral, the human bond partner is not trained for dangerous missions. Shira looked at Daniel with steady eyes. He has proven resourceful. He sees patterns differently, and the Zir will not expect a human civilian to accompany me. Daniel whispered. This is a bad idea. Just letting you know. Shira answered calmly. Many good solutions begin with bad ideas. Daniel shrugged. Well, I can't argue with that. The room emptied after orders were given. Soon, only Daniel and Shira remained. She looked at him quietly. You are afraid? She said. Daniel nodded. Of course. Anyone would be. Shira's voice softened. Fear does not mean weakness. Fear means awareness. Use it to stay sharp. Daniel took a breath. I'll try. Before they left, Shira gave him a small Vulcan wrist device. This is an emergency beacon. If we are separated, activate it. It will call the ship. Daniel strapped it on. Got it. Soon after, they boarded a small shuttle. The bay doors opened slowly, revealing the silent darkness of space. The shuttle launched, leaving the grand Vrexall dawn behind like a steel mountain fading into the distance. Daniel sat beside Shira, trying not to shake. She sat with perfect posture, eyes forward, calm like a warrior who had done this 1,000 times. "You really trust me to join you?" Daniel asked quietly. Shira answered without looking at him. "I trust your judgment. You see things we do not. The bond pushed us together, but your actions prove your value." Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest, not romantic, just respect, a deep respect for her trust. The shuttle approached a gray moon where the Dominion had requested the meeting. It was a dead world with cracked ground and no air. The landing zone was a small metal platform surrounded by rocky hills. Shira stood as the shuttle landed. Daniel followed slowly. When the doors opened, the cold, dry air outside hissed softly. The two stepped out wearing protective masks that filtered the thin atmosphere. Zir guards waited ahead, tall and insect-like, their armor dark and shiny. Their eyes glowed faintly. They moved with unnatural precision, like machines that breathed. One Zir commander stepped forward. "Admiral Shira," it said in a sharp, echoing voice. "Come, alone." Shira's tail flicked once. "My bond partner comes with me." The Zir commander's eyes glowed brighter. "Unacceptable." Shira's tone did not change. "Those are the conditions." A long, tense silence followed. Finally, the Zir commander turned and gestured for both of them to follow. Daniel walked beside Shira, his hand resting near the side pocket where he kept his small toolkit. Not a weapon, just tools. But tools were sometimes better than weapons. The Zir led them into a dark metal bunker built inside the moon's rock. The corridors were narrow and cold. Strange green lights flickered along the walls. Then the attack happened. Before they even reached the meeting chamber, the lights turned red and an alarm screamed. Zir warriors poured from side tunnels with weapons raised. Shira reacted instantly. She grabbed Daniel's arm and pulled him behind a metal beam as energy blasts tore through the corridor. Daniel shouted, "I knew it was a trap!" Shira answered, "Correct! Stay behind me!" She fired her pulse weapon with sharp accuracy, hitting the first wave of Zir attackers. Her movements were fast, elegant, and deadly. Daniel crouched behind her, trying to stay small. The Zir forces kept coming. One enemy threw an EMP grenade. It exploded above them, knocking out the lights and disabling every device in the hall, including Daniel's beacon. Daniel's wrist device clicked uselessly. "Great! Fantastic! Everything is broken! Why does this always happen near me?" Shira shot 2 more attackers. "Follow me!" They ran deeper into the bunker. Blasts echoed everywhere. The ground shook. The Zir wanted Shira alive, but they didn't care whether Daniel survived. They reached a side chamber, and Shira shoved the door shut, sealing it with a metal bar. The room was dim, with only one flickering lamp. Shira leaned against the door, breathing hard for the first time Daniel had ever seen. "The EMP disabled our shuttle. We are trapped on this moon." Daniel leaned against a wall and exhaled. "This mission is going great so far." Shira didn't laugh, but her tail twitched slightly, a Vulcan sign of mild amusement. The room had a broken comm panel. Daniel walked toward it and tapped it lightly. "If I can fix this, we might contact the ship." Shira nodded. "Do it." Daniel knelt and opened the panel. Sparks jumped from the wires. He began reconnecting circuits with the tiny tools he kept on him. It felt calming to work with machines during chaos. While he worked, Shira looked around the room, alert for danger. She checked her weapon and listened for footsteps. "Daniel," she said softly. "Hmm?" he replied, while tightening a wire. "Why did you follow me into danger? You could have refused. Daniel shrugged without looking up. You trusted me, and I didn't want you to face this alone. Shira watched him for a long moment. Her eyes softened. Humans are strange. Your kind fights in ways we do not understand. Daniel smiled faintly. Humans survive by doing everything the wrong way first. Shira responded quietly, and yet you survive. Before Daniel could answer, footsteps echoed outside. Zir soldiers were searching. Daniel whispered, Almost done. Almost. Yes. The comm panel lit up weakly. Static filled the room. Shira leaned close. Vrexaldon, this is Admiral Shira. Respond. A faint voice came through. Admiral, weak signal, repeat. Daniel adjusted 2 wires. Try again. Shira repeated the message, louder. This is Admiral Shira. We are under attack. Prepare extraction. The voice replied. Understood. Sending. The signal died. The panel went dark again. Daniel groaned. The power cell is dry. We bought a few seconds, nothing more. Shira placed a hand on his shoulder gently. You did well. Daniel felt surprised. Compliments from her were rare and heavy with meaning. They prepared to move, but when Shira opened the door, a Zir warrior was waiting. It lunged, striking her. She hit the ground with a painful sound. Daniel yelled her name and grabbed the nearest object, a broken metal pipe. He swung it with all his strength, hitting the Zir in the head. It stumbled back, stunned. Shira kicked upward, knocking it down completely. Daniel reached to help her up. You okay? Shira nodded, though her side was bleeding slightly. We must keep moving. They will swarm soon. Daniel supported her as they ran. They moved through a maze of tunnels until they reached an old mining shaft. A cold wind blew through the darkness. This place is unstable, Daniel said. Good, Shira replied. Unstable terrain weakens the enemy. They climbed down into the shaft. Rocks shifted under their feet. Daniel struggled to keep his balance, and Shira leaned on him slightly because of her injury. It felt strange. She was always so strong, so untouchable. Now she needed him, and Daniel refused to let her fall. At the bottom of the shaft, they found a narrow cave. Zir footsteps echoed above them. Shira leaned against the wall. We wait here. The ship will track the brief signal you sent. Daniel sat beside her, breathing hard. I hope they hurry. Shira looked at him silently. You saved me again, she said. Daniel shook his head. We saved each other. For a moment, Shira let her guard down. Her eyes softened, and her voice became warm. Human Daniel, you are not like the warriors of my world, but your courage is real. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. You're not like anyone I've ever met either. Before either could say more, a tremor shook the cave. Dust fell from the ceiling. The Zir were closing in fast. Shira tightened her grip on her weapon. Daniel tightened his grip on the pipe. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Because bond or no bond, accident or not, they were no longer just two strangers from different worlds. They were a team. The final hours before the last battle felt strangely calm on the flagship. Humans and Valari soldiers moved through the wide halls with steady steps, checking weapons and repairing armor plates. There was no shouting, no chaos, only quiet determination. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone knew this was the final stand between freedom and extinction. And through all of it, Admiral Saren kept glancing toward Elias as if drawing strength from him. The translation chip sat silent in her ear, still slightly glitching, still unpredictable. But Saren did not try to fix it. She kept it the way it was, almost like she liked the accident it had caused. Elias was standing at a table full of holographic maps when she approached him. His shoulders were stiff, but his eyes were steady. When he saw her coming, he softened just a little. She stood beside him, her tail curling slowly behind her. A nervous habit she could not hide. Are you ready? He asked her. I am ready. she said, but her voice had a faint tremor. "Are you?" He nodded. "We survived this. No other option." Her ears lifted slightly, the Velari version of a smile. "Yes, we survive." For a moment, they said nothing more. There was nothing to say. Outside the window, the dark swarm ships were already gathering like a storm over the stars. Their metal bodies reflected no light. Their weapons glowed with sickly colors. The sight of them made Elias clench his jaw. The swarm had destroyed human colonies, consumed Velari worlds, and hunted both species for years. Now the swarm was coming for the last piece of resistance. Saren reached out and placed her hand on his wrist. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. She had done it only once before, during the night after the false marriage announcement. Elias looked down at her hand, then at her face. Her eyes were sharp but soft at the edges. "We fight together," she said. He nodded. "Together." She released his wrist but remained close. Her tail brushed against his leg before she pulled it back quickly, embarrassed. Elias only gave her a calm smile, and she let out a breath she did not know she was holding. The loudspeakers echoed suddenly through the ship. The battle was beginning. Elias and Saren walked side by side onto the command bridge. Officers stood from their seats and saluted the Admiral. Screens lit up with enemy movements. The swarm ships were advancing in large formations, trying to surround the fleet. The danger was obvious. If the Velari human fleet got trapped, everything would end before it began. Serene gave her orders with perfect clarity. Her voice carried confidence that spread through the crew like fire in dry grass. Elias watched her with admiration. She was born for leadership. Even with the glitching translation chip, even with the stress tightening her voice, she stood like an unbreakable pillar. The fleet moved into formation. Human ships formed tight defensive lines. Velari ships took agile positions on the wings. Every engine burned bright. Every shield hummed. Every soldier waited for the signal. The swarm fired first. Dozens of beams sliced across the void, lighting the darkness like violent stars. The shields shook as the first impacts landed. The ship trembled. Panels flickered. A few officers stumbled but quickly returned to their stations. Saren shouted commands. Elias coordinated the human reinforcement ships, guiding them into safer positions. Together, they shifted the formation just in time to avoid a deadly trap. Explosions erupted outside, small flashes in the distance, signals of lives lost, but the battle had only begun. The swarm was powerful but predictable. They moved like machines with no instinct for change. Humans and Velari adapted fast, switching strategies mid-flight, countering swarm tactics with sudden angle shifts and unpredictable maneuvers. Elias gave ideas faster than his hands could move. Saren processed every detail he spoke, merging it with her own strategic knowledge. Despite the chaos, Saren found a moment to look at him. "Your people fight with fire," she said, "and yours fight with heart." Her tail lifted again, betraying the warmth she tried to keep hidden. But soon the battlefield shifted. A massive swarm dreadnought appeared behind the enemy lines, pushing forward with a weapon that could rip apart whole fleets. The ship's massive core glowed brighter and brighter. On the bridge, the warning lights flashed red. "That weapon will destroy us if it charges completely," Elias said. Saren stared at the monstrous ship. "Then we stop it now." "It's too big," an officer said. "We can't break through that many swarm ships protecting it." Elias suddenly had an idea. It was risky, maybe even foolish, but humans were known for impossible ideas. "What if we don't attack it from outside?" he said. Saren's ears angled toward him. "Explain." "We board it. A small team. Slip through during their formation shift. Destroy the core from the inside." The bridge went quiet. "That is not a survival plan," a Velari officer said. "No," Elias agreed, "but it's a victory plan." Saren stared at him for 3 long seconds. Her tail dropped low, showing fear. Then slowly, her expression hardened into resolve. "I will lead the team," she said. Elias stepped forward instantly. "No, She cut him off. "I am the Admiral. If anyone must take this risk, it is me." "Then I'm coming with you," he said without hesitation. Her ears twitched, and her translation chip glitched for a moment, making her respond, "Yes, husband." Half the bridge froze. Elias blinked. Saren's face flushed with bright embarrassment. She quickly corrected herself. "I meant, friend! Friend!" she said loud and fast. Elias tried not to laugh at how flustered she was. "Yeah! Friend! I'm still coming with you." She looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She simply nodded. The boarding mission began within minutes. A stealth shuttle launched toward the dreadnought. Swarm fighters swarmed around them, firing deadly beams, but Valari escorts shielded them with powerful energy bursts. Human pilots wove through enemy fire with incredible skill. The shuttle finally slipped through a small opening in the dreadnought's hull. Inside the giant ship, the halls were dark and filled with strange mechanical structures. The swarm did not use organic soldiers. Their drones floated silently, scanning for intruders. Elias and Saren moved with a small group of mixed soldiers, careful and quiet. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. Drones appeared around corners without warning, firing strange blasts of energy. Elias dodged one beam by inches. Saren leaped forward with surprising speed, slicing a drone apart before it could finish charging another shot. Her tail whipped behind her as she swung her blade with deadly precision. "Stay close," she told him. "You stay close," he replied. She looked at him for a second longer than necessary before continuing forward. Finally, they reached the core chamber. The core was massive, a glowing sphere of energy spinning within heavy mechanical rings. Its brightness filled the chamber with a harsh white light. The humming was so strong that Elias felt it in his bones. "That's going to destroy the whole fleet," he said. "Then we destroy it first," Saren replied. They placed explosive charges around the core's stabilizers. Everything shook as the dreadnought continued firing its weapon outside. The countdown began, but the room's doors opened suddenly, and dozens of swarm drones poured inside. The team fought hard. Elias shot drone after drone, his hands shaking but steady. Saren moved like a silver streak, cutting through them with perfect accuracy. A drone aimed at Elias from behind, and Saren jumped in front of him, taking the blast on her armor. She fell to one knee. "Saren!" Elias shouted, grabbing her shoulder. "I am fine!" she hissed, pushing herself up. "Focus on the drones!" But her breathing was uneven. Elias grabbed her hand tightly, and she squeezed back just for a moment, long enough for him to feel her strength returning. They fought side by side, refusing to fall. The final seconds of the charge ticked down. The team made a run for the exit. The explosion erupted behind them, shaking the entire dreadnought. Alarms blared as the ship began collapsing from the inside. The shuttle escaped just before the dreadnought blew apart in a massive burst of light. Back on the flagship, cheers erupted across every deck. The swarm fleet was breaking apart now that their strongest ship was destroyed. Humans and Valari chased them out of the system, firing with renewed strength. Victory spread like wildfire. Elias and Saren stepped out of the shuttle, bruised, exhausted, but alive. The crew surrounded them with pride and gratitude. Saren looked around, then back at Elias. Her tail swayed slowly, softly. The translation chip glitched again at the worst possible moment. "Your husband has returned safely," she said confidently, then froze as everyone stared. Elias stared too. Her ears dropped. Her tail curled in panic. "I meant friend, friend," she said quickly. Elias stepped closer. "Maybe it wasn't completely wrong." Saren's eyes widened, unable to hide the hope she felt. He offered his hand. She hesitated only a heartbeat before taking it. The crew cheered again, louder than before. And for the first time since the glitch, Serene did not try to fix the translation chip. She let it say what it wanted. Because maybe, soon, it would not be a glitch at all.